Going live.
All right, I have 5:30. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the meeting will be held by Zoom video conference for participants. Viewers will be able to watch the meeting live on YouTube. The YouTube channel is the North Little Rock School District Board Meetings. So it's called this special board meeting to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Temple?
Here.
Dr. Redis?
Here.
Mrs. Wacom?
Here.
Mr. Zagreski?
Here.
Ms. Angela Person-West? Ms. Williams? Mr. Still?
Okay. Thank you, Rhonda. So we're on to action items, and I will give it to Dr. Paluski.
Thank you, Madam President. For the record, Greg Paluski, Superintendent. Madam President, we'll start with action item 3.1, which is the employment of personnel. So the superintendent recommends the employment of personnel licensed and employment of personnel classified.
Go ahead.
Madam President, I so move that we accept the employment of personnel found on page 2 and page 3.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion carried.
Thank you, Madam President, members of our board. Action item 3.2 is the approval of the FY20 audit report. If you recall, at our last regular meeting that we had a presentation regarding our audit for FY20, and I'll turn that over as just a recommendation to accept the audit report as presented at the last workshop, at the last regular board meeting, excuse me.
Madam President,
Yes.
I so move that we accept the fiscal year 20 audit report found on page 5.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or discussions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion's carried.
Thank you, Madam President and members of our board. Action item 3.3, the hazard mitigation plan resolution. And I'll certainly turn this over on this one because it's a little bit unique of a normal resolution that we would pass as it relates to FEMA and flooding, and ensuring that if the school district was in need of support, that we would be able to get that by passing this resolution. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hatch and Mr. Williams very quickly for just a quick summary. Mr. Hatch, Mr. Williams.
Good evening, Madam President, Superintendent, board members. In a nutshell, I think Dr. Paluski covered it, that by joining and adopting the mitigation plan as set forth by Pulaski County, then it will enable us to be in a better position to get funding should we encounter any natural disaster, i.e. flooding, tornadoes, even the recent snow event that we had. So it's highly recommended that we pass this. There's really no action items for the district to do with this mitigation plan other than to adopt it and to put us in a better position for this funding post-disaster and in some cases pre-disaster.
Indeed.
The plan itself is quite cumbersome. It's 175 pages. It outlines flood-prone areas. It goes into a history of potentials for these disasters, for tornadoes and whatnot. So really, it's really a historical document, if you will, of our chances of being affected by these events. So I definitely recommend adopting it. We have in the past. I think the last one was adopted in 2014. So I believe that we need to adopt this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hatch. Mr. Williams, anything you want to add to that, sir?
Just echo what Mr. Hatch said. He's right on target.
Thank you, gentlemen. Madam President, Superintendent recommends the 3.3 action item hazardous mitigation plan resolution.
Any questions from anyone? Okay, I need a motion.
Madam President,
Yes.
I so move that we adopt the resolution for the mitigation plan for the North Little Rock School District.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion's carried.
Thank you, Madam President, members of our board.
And then do we need to make a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn the special board meeting and move into the workshop.
Okay, may I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Let's go into the workshop. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, ma'am. Would you let me know when you're ready, Ms. Temple?
I'm just pulling up that agenda. Or trying to. I don't know why it's, okay, here we go. All right, so we're at school choice and student assignment procedures. So Dr. Paluski, I'll let you take it from here.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam President and members of our board. Our first presentation this evening is on school choice and student assignment procedures, certainly being new to North Little Rock and Arkansas. One of the things I've asked Mr. Stone to do with Dr. McGee and myself is to do an overview of our school choice and our student assignment procedures for the board and the public as we think about our school choice window in which we're in now up until May 1st. We thought it was in the best interest of the board and the public that we share our current process and procedures. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Stone for his presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Paluski. Allow me to share my screen with you guys. Are you guys seeing the screen there? Student assignment procedures?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Paluski. We are in the middle of receiving enrollment applications for the 2021-22 school year. Tonight, I want to share with you and the community procedures used when enrolling and assigning students into the North Little Rock School District. Did your screen move? I want to make sure you're seeing what I'm seeing.
Yes,
Seeing purpose.
We're on purpose.
It's okay, good deal. The purpose of this presentation is to review procedures used when assigning students to and to recruit families who are seeking a change to come to the North Little Rock School District. I will cover the school choice, legal transfer, the teacher's choice, Intradistrict Transfer, which our community is familiar with the terminology, special permission, and no space availability procedures. Okay, let's start with school choice. Parents have the opportunity to apply for school choice now through the end of the day on May 1st. Applications are found on our website underneath the School Choice 2021 tab. We collect proof of address during the application process, which they can upload the documentation online. Once approved, the permission is valid until the student graduates unless they move outside of the district that they were released from. The student is enrolled in another district, private school or charter school, or the parent decides to return to their district of residency. If you notice on my slide there, currently, just as a note, currently we have 266 active school choice students within our district. School choice for 2021-22 school year. That put this slide in here so that you guys could be reminded. Right now, as of last week's number, we were at 97 total applicants that's applied for school choice. The graph will show you by what grade level that the kids, the parents are asking for. So notice kindergarten, there's 31, then first grade, 5, second, third, fourth, and so on. If you can't see 11th, that's a weird color there. That's 3. Okay, legal transfer. Outside of school choice, another way a family can apply to be a part of the North Little Rock School District is through legal transfer. There's a difference in this process. The family has to petition their board in their school district for approval to leave, and then the resident district, which is us, would have to approve to accept them. We've done several of these in the past where we've sent some off and we've received some in. And in our system, as a note, legal transfer numbers that we have K-12 pulled in February was 75, and there hadn't been any since February or any other time that you guys approved any. So 75 would be the correct or accurate number to date. Teacher's choice. Employees who work for the North Little Rock School District may apply for their children to attend school in the district in which they work. As long as that employee is actively employed, their child may continue enrollment under teacher's choice. The approval is always subject to space availability. And we have, as a note, 216 children here on teacher's choice that's active in our system. Intradistrict transfer. Again, this is what our community and parents know as special permission. Parents within the district has an opportunity to attend a school outside of their attendance zone through what we call intradistrict transfer or special permission. We look at space availability. We look at the reasons why. We look at tardiness, and we look at attendance during this process. If approved, a parent is responsible for transportation. So on intradistrict, it works like a school choice where families coming from outside of the district into the district, like families inside the district want to move outside of their zone into another zone. No transportation will be provided for those causes. No space availability. There are times where there's no space in a particular grade level in a zone school. If this is the case, we find the space at the next closest school, and we do offer transportation in this case. The child is automatically assigned back to their zone school the next school year. We usually do not have this problem in the secondary schools with spacing, but in the event that we do, we only have one middle school and one high school, then we would have to make accommodations for that family for zone our school district zone students in the secondary. We would have to make those accommodations. Oh, there's a note, there's only 35 students that were, no space or somewhere that they're not zoned for. And so they will be rolled back to their zone school in the new year. Okay, I want to go through step-by-step assignment procedures. So I've got an example here for you guys to follow. So let me go through this. Each year, a report I'll pull a report from eSchool, and the report is called the next year school report, to determine the number of zone students who will be rolled over and counted into the zone school enrollment numbers. Also, the number of teachers by section by grade at each elementary building is gathered. The data gives the number of available seats for students at each school. Okay, look at the example there. If a school has 4 sections of kindergarten students, the maximum number for kindergarten student, according to state, is 20. So 20 times 4 will give me 80 available seats at that school. And for third grade, for first, second, and third grade, if that section is 3, there's 25 is the max. For fourth and fifth grade, it's 28 is the max. So you multiply, your multiplier is the number of sections time the number of students max, and that gives you your total available space per grade level at that school. So I do that for each school, keeping in mind that I pull that next year's tab or data so I can see what spaces are already accounted for before any assignments are made. After the number of seats are determined at each school site, the following steps are followed. I use the number of the zone students from the next year report is counted into that number at each zone school. The report is run to ensure that zone students are given priority for placement at their zone school. And then the second thing I do is the projected number of available seats is determined. And in that projection, wherever possible, we save seats for families who may potentially move in over the summertime. Next, we consider the school choice and legal transfer if there's any. Then we consider the teacher choice applicants. And finally, we consider the intradistrict school choice or special permission students. And then we send out a letter somewhere around mid-May to families if they were accepted or not accepted for whatever they were requesting. All families are encouraged to pre-register for the next year's enrollment. Now, as a note, the school choice law gives us preference to siblings. So we look at siblings first, so they're considered, and then all other applicants are considered date by date and time order. Okay, during the special permission process, my office communicate with the school and send documentation. We work back and forth with those numbers at each school. If we determine that the school is out of space, the school will communicate with the parent that there are currently no space available, but they will add them to a wait list. The parents will be contacted by my office if the student is going to be assigned to the next closest school due to no space. Transportation in this event is offered because that's not their fault that space is not available. And I just want to conclude with and say that my office make every effort to ensure a successful enrollment process for all. So at this time, I'll pause and take any questions that you may have or want clarity to.
Madam, I do have just one question, just clarification.
Yes,
On
ma'am.
the school choice and the assignments, special permission, once you've received it, you still have to go through the process every year, or is it automatic that you stay at that school?
School choice?
Yeah, like if you got school choice to go to Meadow Park and you're in the third grade, does that mean that you stay there through the fifth grade, or do you have to re-register each year?
In short, yes, ma'am, you stayed through the fifth grade.
Okay.
And let me add to that, because just in case someone was, maybe would ask this question, school choice, and I'm speaking of students coming from outside the district into the district. School choice, once we accept the school choice students into the North Little Rock School District, whatever school we accept them into, they become a part of that community. Okay, so they'll stay in that school through the fifth grade as well. Does that make sense?
Got a quick
It
question.
does. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So are a lot of our schools, I assume many of our schools are set up with 80 kindergartners and 75 first graders. Is that pretty common among our schools?
Yes, sir, that is, except for we have Glenview is a little smaller because they have a larger pre-K community.
Okay.
And then you have Indian Hills and Ridge Road has more sections of some of those classrooms.
Does that often lead,
Larger schools.
okay, does that often lead to having to shift kids around after their kindergarten year, or do we usually have enough attrition or other changes that avoid that change in 5 students from being a problem?
We usually have enough attrition that happens. That's why we feel comfortable in rolling them back. If they're out of zone because of no space, we roll them back the next year, and we usually do pretty good with that. The most problematic year is always that first year, the kindergarten year, because we have so many that's wanting to get into a certain school, and once we make that assignment. Once we make the assignment for those students, it usually rolls pretty well throughout the 5th grade year.
Okay. I was just curious if it was a problem, if we'd ever thought of maybe capping the kindergarten at 75, so we're not shifting kids around. But if it's not a big issue, then do you follow what I'm saying?
I do, and that's why we built in the where space is available, I save space for families moving in over the summer. So I build in that space before I give away all that space, we take away space from what I actually have. So for instance, at 80, I may give away up to 70, 71, 72 spaces and keep some for potential summer move-ins.
Okay, that's excellent. That's what I was wondering. Thanks a lot.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, so on your report, it said you had 35 students in the district that were where they were because they had no space. So just for my clarification, if somebody gets in, like I guess Dr. Redis asked, if they get in, say, Meadow Park, they get to stay. But if I move into Meadow Park and there's not a slot for me, that puts me in no space.
That would
I don't get preference over.
that will not for the rollback students, the 35 that you're talking about. Remember, I pulled the next year's tab, and so in their next year's tab, they're already a part of that community to where they're supposed to be. So that will not, you will not be rolled out. You'll be rolled actually into that zone, your zone school. And now,
so this just happens if they come in after the school starts. Is that kind of how these 35 no space happen? They come after everything started?
A lot of the times that's the case. They come in mid-year or they register extremely late, because we pull a report, late spring, and then we're not making assignments until mid-May. So they've come in the summertime or they enroll sometime during the late spring or something like that. Okay.
And then the other question I had is on that intra-district transfers, you had a number 45 and then a /89. So were there 45 that got it and 89 that requested? Is that what?
That's correct. That's correct. That was 45 of the 89 requests was granted.
Okay, and the other ones weren't granted because of no space?
No space.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, ma'am.
I had a quick question. My phone decided to do an update, so it might have already been answered. So my phone just went out on me. But if the student, if it's a sibling, we were talking about the siblings. If one person has a sibling what do they need to apply for if they're maybe some other siblings are trying to get into the deal like that?
Okay, I think I heard part of what you say, you cut out, but let me repeat what I think you're asking. If a sibling requests to go to a school, like school choice, a sibling is requesting to come to the same school, how do they get in? Is that what you're asking?
Right, like what do they need to apply for to try to get in? Is that under the special permission?
Okay, if they're coming from outside the district, they need to apply for school choice. If they're if they're within the district, they need to apply for special permission.
Okay, okay.
Make sense?
That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That was very informative.
Okay.
Thank you for the breakdown.
You're welcome.
If I can just add to that, Ms. Temple, I want to recognize Mr. Stone. I think you recognize that in each weekly board report, I think he's done a really good job of monitoring and keeping the board updated as those numbers, as we've started the overall just enrollment, but keeping you updated on those school choice numbers.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And my other screen just went blank on the next action item. I'm trying to get it back up.
This must be the evening of.
Cindy, it's regarding the school uniform survey.
Okay, yes, that's,
Yep.
Yeah. so I got it now. School uniform survey.
Yep. So, Madam President and members of our board, I know it was a request by our board members. I know Mr. Stone's going to go through some of the history of this as the board a year ago, given the pandemic, had delayed, the use of school year, the implementation of school uniforms for this school year. So the board had requested that we do some survey data of our students as well as our parents as it relates to school uniforms. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Stone, who has diligently collected all that information, and we'll share that with you as for your information and the public. Mr. Stone.
Okay. Are you guys seeing my screen for school uniform? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, in August 2020, the board voted to waive the student uniform policy for the 2020-2021 school year to assist our families in the wake of COVID-19. The Office of Student Services, we collected data from students and parents. So the purpose tonight is just to review that data and to gain input from the board about the future of school uniforms. Okay. All right, let's look at the survey. Let's talk about the survey. A couple of things was asked. It was 2 items, the child's school, and then we asked, should there be a school uniform, yes or no? And so in the participant area, we had 1,623 students to respond. We had 1,385 parents to respond, which is a total of 3,008 respondents. We surveyed elementary students, 4th, 5th grade, 6th and 7th grade at the middle school. And then at our academy, we surveyed the 6th through 12th grade, since the academy entire school population wears uniform. Okay, I'm going to go school by school with the data that was collected, but I want to draw your attention to the how the data is collected here. On the left-hand side, you're going to see student information. So there's a percentage for student. On the right-hand side, you'll see percentages for the parents, and you'll see the number of participants above each column. So if you look at the student column, 17 and 83, there was 100 participants at Amboy. And for parents, there was 31 and 90 participants for parents. So 83% of students who participated in this survey voted no, there should not be a uniform. 17% said yes. On the parent side, you had 74% of parents, of Amboy parents, said no, we should not have a school uniform, and 26% said yes. For Boone Park, 90% of our student population that participated said no, no uniforms, and 10% said yes. 77% of our parents at Boone Park said no uniforms, and 23% of them said yes. Crestwood. At Crestwood, 89% of the students said no, 11% said yes, 67% of our parents said no, 33% said yes. At Glenview, yet 88% of our students said no, and 12 said yes. Parents, 85% no, we don't want uniforms. 15% said yes. Indian Hills, 94% students, no, and 6% yes. 80% parents says no, 20% yes. And just keep, notice the numbers here as we go through how many of those are saying that. Lakewood Elementary, 90% of the students said no. 10% said yes, and 80% of the students parents says no, and 20% said yes. Middle Park, 85% student population said no, 15% say yes, 72% of the parents says no, and 28% say yes. Ridge Road, 88% versus 12%. On the student side, 78% versus 22% on the parent side. And 7th Street, 84% of our students there says no uniforms, and 16% say yes. 83% of the parents says no, and 17% says yes. Now, when we move to the middle school, the middle school students at 6th grade, 96% of them said no, we don't want uniforms, and 4% said yes. And then out of the parent group, 88% versus 12% saying yes. And the 7th and 8th grade, when you think the percentages were not going to get any higher, the students at the 7th, 8th grade campus of 7th grade said 97% of us say no, and 3% says yes. And then out of the parent group, 91% versus 9%. And then the academy, 88% of our students that participated says no, and 12% yes. Parents, 80% versus 20%. Now, this last this slide here is the district total, and you have 3 data areas here. 91% of the students that participated district-wide says no, there should not be a uniform, and 9% says yes. And on the parent side, 80% of them says no, there should not be a uniform. 20% says yes. And then I put one more piece of data in here for you guys. I realized that as I was going through the data that there was some duplicates, and how I determined that is I can see the IP addresses where the information was coming from. The students, for the most part, did all of their servering at school, but the parents, of course, was at home or elsewhere. And I noticed that there was some duplicates, multiple duplicates in some areas. So I removed all the duplicates. And even with removing that, if you will look at the percentages, 79% versus 21% is still pretty close to the 80%, 20% with the duplicates left in. So, that's the data of the survey, from the survey. So according to the data collected from parents, the results indicate that they would prefer not to wear school uniforms. But I want, as a side note, regardless of whatever your decision is, the students will receive support from the district as usual. So there's support available for them, whatever way you guys go with this. So now I'm going to stop talking, and now it's I say one of the purpose was to get input from you guys on how to move forward with uniforms. So I'll stop talking and allow you guys to give us some direction on that.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I think you were here. If we went to no uniforms, do we still have in the archives the guidelines for the dress code?
Yes, ma'am. When you guys, when you waived, when the board waived the uniform for this year, at the same time, I presented to you guys a dress code. And so there is a dress code in place in lieu of a uniform policy that follows the high school dress code.
Okay.
That answers your question. Okay.
Good question.
All right. I have a question. Mr. Stone, as a former building administrator and current district administrator, what are your 2 cents on the uniform policy? You've seen it from all angles. It's obvious what the parents and the students think. What does the district think is the best path forward?
Well, I won't go personal. I have children in the district, and personally, it's easy for me to know what my children are wearing. But I respect the data. And so as a building administrator, I've asked and talked with several out there, and I can tell you what I'm getting is that they have no problems thus far with bullying or kids misbehaving due to not wearing uniforms. So I like to take their lead on that and just share that with you guys and say, and I've talked to at least 4 principals out there last week, it said they're not having problems with not having uniforms. So I think the times have changed and the kids may have changed a little bit as well. So I think as an administrator, my thoughts are that we go with the data.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else?
Should we revamp or maybe talk about the uniform policy, not the uniform policy, excuse me, the dress code currently? Is there anything on there that maybe we need to change or look at again, possibly?
We could, Ms. Walken, we could definitely bring that back to the board to do more of a deep dive into the dress code policy to get some feedback, or as we go through it, now that you're bringing this up, we could come back and where we think maybe that we've got to tighten it up as we work with our administrators to make some revisions to that. We could certainly do that. I would highly recommend that we do that. If just so we can look at it in comparison, that if the board is leaning, one way, that to Dr. Redis's question, do we have that in place? The answer is yes, but are there some tweaks that we need to make? We'll be happy to do that for you.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Well, I was just going to say thank you for the survey and the presentation. It was very good. And I personally was surprised. I thought it was going to be a little closer, maybe, maybe closer to 50-50. So I was surprised. And I too, as a parent, like not having to decide what my child was going to wear, but I appreciate the data. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stone.
You're welcome.
And the last thing I just want to add, and this is really for the public, and I think it speaks to our board that they wanted to hear from parents and wanted to hear from teachers. I think just kudos to our board members for requesting of us that information.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for all the hard work, because I want what the community wants. Personally, I'm a uniform girl, but I want what the community wants, and I thank you for the data because that helps.
So, Madam President, just kind of conclude with this, then what we'll do at our next regular board meeting, we will bring back to you first, we'll bring back as Ms. Woncom alluded to, we'll bring back our dress code policy. We'll give that a chance for you to review, and we'll make some recommendations as we work with our principals, show you what those revisions would be to present to you to make recommendations. And then following that would be a action item or interaction item then for the board to take a stance on uniforms for 21-22. That way you'll have some information then to further and make an informed decision, including this information. That sounds
Thank you
great.
very much.
okay?
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Great presentation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Stone. Appreciate your leadership on that, sir. And that was a
Thank
quick
you.
turnaround on Mr. Stone, so I appreciate him turning that around pretty quickly. And I appreciate our public support and participation from our students as well as our parents. So thank you, Mr. Stone.
So we're through the public use of school facilities and
Yes.
North Little Rock JUA policies.
Yep, this is a joint use agreement between the North Little Rock and the city. I believe as it relates to tennis courts in the joint use of the agreement and some partnering that we've done with the city of North Little Rock. So I'm going to turn that over to Ms. Rhodes Newburn for a very, very brief kind of synopsis of that agreement. Ms. Rhodes Newburn?
Thank you, Dr. Pelusi. Good evening to the board, President Temple. This is just a joint use agreement. This is a formal agreement for the North Little Rock tennis courts. This project has been going on since 2018, was when we originally got funded for the ADE, or Arkansas Department of Education Joint Use Agreement grant. We got $30,000 and $500 to address policy, $30,000 to go towards the project. This particular project, because of it being tennis courts, USTA was interested in it, and we actually applied for a USTA grant, and we were under a technical assistance grant with them. And then COVID hit. They approved our plans, COVID hit, and then we had to table our plans. And so now we're ready to move forward again. And this formal use is being asked so that we can go to the city council to ask them for $38,000 to go towards the project to finish phase 1. Are there any questions?
I just have one question. I don't know. I know that at one point we were talking about building projects and such, and that the middle school was something that was on everybody's mind and talking about building it in another location on the same site. That would not be part of the place that we'd end up needing to build, correct? I'm assuming that. If we ended up building the middle school on the site, this area where the tennis courts are would not be part of area we would need, correct?
Madam President, this is Harold Hatch. I can speak to that, and I can tell you firmly that that would not be a good site for any building for the middle school. So it won't impact any future plans at the middle school.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Just out of clarity, the tennis court that we're talking about, Heather, is at the middle school?
Yes, ma'am. It's at the front of the 7th, 8th grade side of the middle school.
Okay.
Campus side, right there to the left.
Gotcha. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Quick question. I know it is not covered here, so I assume it will not be lit, correct? It's only going to be for daytime use?
Yes, it's only going to be for daytime use at this point. And the thing is, this will be like a multiple phase project. Our goal is to eventually add courts from year to year, but in order to even apply for those grants, I have to get these grant funds spent first to reapply for next year so that we can go on to the next phases and really meet what they want to see at the middle school campus.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions?
So just for clarification, again, this site is held at the middle school, but yet it will be used for the entire school district and the city, correct? Meaning the taxpayers.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It will be open to the public. It'll be the same way that our playgrounds are right now. Our playgrounds are open up to the public after school hours.
Yes, and just like the walking track over at Ridge Road, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yep,
Just like the track.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome.
Thank you for the initiative to go out and find more money.
Yes, ma'am. No problem.
Always appreciated.
So will our next step be to vote on this during the next regular meeting, Dr. Paluski?
Yes, sir, Mr. Kresge, that's exactly right. We just want to make sure we got it in front of you, ask any questions, and then we'll bring that back as an action. Yes, sir.
Does anybody know how our tennis team is doing? I know we're playing out at Burns Park at those courts. Anyone have an update? How are we doing with them?
I do not have an update on that. We can get you one. I'm not sure if anybody on our staff has an update.
Dr. Paluski, if I may, I know they are doing well. I met with the coach. They are doing pretty good. We still are working on trying to solidify a more concise place where they want to practice and practice time during the off season. We know the tennis starts mainly in the summer. In the fall, the sport continues. So that's where we are briefly.
Thank you, Dr. McGee.
Yeah, perfect. Great. Thank you. So that's good. These courts can help our own team. Perfect. Good.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
One quick question, Ms. Rhodes Newborn. As far as like the city being able to use the courts, will they be able to host any type of events there? Of course, considering weekends or anything like that, would they be able to host events or just use it as far as just recreational purposes?
Yes, they will be able to host events, but they will be working that out with Mr. Brown and Dr. Paluski as far as that's goes. But it's to host tournaments. It basically will make our city to where we're able to host the USTA tournaments.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay.
So it'll benefit the school district and the city and everybody. It's a win-win for everybody.
I would, if there's a way for us to avoid confusion during those off-season times where they're using it outside school hours, if we could post that information. I know that's further down the road. That's not part of this, but I just don't want people to get upset because we said they're available for public use and then our tennis team shows up. So if we can post practice hours.
Like a calendar of events.
Just communicate with it so that when folks walk up there, they know that at 3 o'clock, the tennis team will be there. Just something to consider for the future. Okay. I know it's kind of noise right now.
Okay, we'll create a schedule like we do for the high school track that we haven't used right now.
Great.
Thank you.
Good suggestion.
Thank you for your work on this. Okay. So now we're on to the eRate project.
Yeah, so Madam President, members of our board, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Staggers, who's really going to lead this, but to really show some of the cost savings from our eRate project. So I'm going to turn it over to, and Mr. Brown as well, as they both collaborated on this. So Mr. Staggers, I know you've got a presentation to share with our board members.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Paluski. This is a short presentation. It's going to outline our eRate project proposal for the school year 21-22. I'm going to share my screen. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, eRate is the federal reimbursement program for schools and libraries that provides entities with funding discounts. Qualifications are based on the district's average enrollment along with free and reduced numbers. North Little Rock is eligible for $1.2 million in eRate funding over the next 5 years at 85%. We've elected for this year for the use of the potential funding to go to replacing our battery and distribution backup units for our district network closets. Oh, we go back one. This is essentially what we have in all of our schools right now. At each school site in the telco closets or telecommunications closets, we've got battery backups on our equipment, which basically when the power goes out, it allows for graceful shutdown of our equipment so we won't have any equipment that's damaged. And this is the equipment that provides the network distribution for the whole school. They range in price from $8,000 to $13,000 individually. And that's hardware, that's the parts, that's installation. But the discount comes when you buy in bulk, such as what this project outlines. We have 58 qualifying telcos or telecommunications closet throughout the school district. And that's going to be specifically for our K-12 instruction. Pre-K and alternative education sites are not eligible. The project is estimated at $306,000, and this is based on a bid that the winning bid we got in our eRate process from Next Step Innovations. North Little Rock would be responsible for covering $46,000 of that, with the remaining $260,000 funded by eRate. Currently, we've already started replacing some of the UPS units just due to damage, whether that be from water, age, or attrition. And those units that we've already purchased in this school year will be moved over to our ineligible sites. The proposed timeline is all around the eRate filing period. Our eRate consultant, Sharon Dowdy, she's put together this timeline, and this is also in your board packet. It's going to be page 45, and it will outline and list the due dates for filing eRate so that we follow their guidelines. Of course, we've got March 21 to present to the board, and then the end of the month, if we get approval from the board to file the actual eRate project. And we do have language in the eRate RFP that states if you have any questions or concerns about the project, nothing happens until we get final approval from the board. So just to conclude the project again, we've got $1.2 million at 85% reimbursement, and we're only covering about $46,000 of the project. That is what we are submitting to the board for review and approval. If you've got any questions or any concerns, you can contact me directly or contact Dr. Paluski, and we will get all questions answered. Do you have any questions right now that the presentation's at a close?
The only question, how often do we have to update these battery backups? Is that?
It's usually about 5 years you get out of a battery backup. The warranties go for about 3 years. These battery backups that we're purchasing now will replace what was purchased back during construction. So it's been since 2015, 2016. So we're just at that point where it's time. They're starting to fail. And as we're doing more virtual activities, it's just essential that we've got adequate backup on our network equipment.
These are protecting the switches and routers for the network. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Zakreski.
We don't want to replace those.
No, we don't.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Staggers.
Thank you, Mr. Staggers. And then we'll come up with that action item for the next board meeting. Okay.
So now it looks like we're on to the budget workshop.
Yeah, so Madam President, this is part two, and members of our board are part two of the series that we've started at our last workshop back in the beginning of February to start on our operating budget, looking at our budget to actuals over the last 3 years, 4 years. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Brown. And Mr. Brown, if you could maybe start with kind of a very, very snippet of where we left off and where we're going to begin this evening.
Yes, I'll be glad to. Thank you, members of the board. We're going to pick up where we left off. Let me share my screen here. All right. So the last time we spoke, we covered basically the salary section. of the budget. So as you all recall, the 611s are contracted salaries, which are the first two lines. 612s are the temporary job salaries. Line 19 there, overtime, that was for classified employees that qualify for overtime. Lines 20 and 21, those the additional compensation both for certified, the top line, classified for the bottom line. That's for additional work that's performed by employees, whether that be whether that be additional hours worked or being paid for something beyond their contract. Then we have the workshop line, the 616s. That's when teachers or classified employees are paid out for work that's beyond their normal contract. Then we have the subline 617, and then we have the 618s, which were the unused sick leave, and that's separated by employees that are not separating or employees that are separating, and by certified and classified. So the first two lines there were certified, the last two lines were classified, and then that's broken into sick leave pay for those that are separating versus non-separating. Then we have the 619s. Those were the lines 30, 31, and 32 here that I'm showing you. That is for early retirement incentive. That's for our longevity pay when employees who qualify for that by policy, when they retire with Arkansas Teacher Retirement or the district, they qualify for that longevity. So that's where we left off last time. We covered basically all of the 6-1s. That's the salary line. So we'll pick up here with the 6-2s. I guess I'll pause there for just a moment. Just recapping the 6-1s, the salaries. Were there any questions there that were lingering that I might need to answer, or do we pick up and move with the 6-2s, the benefits? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. So this will probably go pretty quickly for you because the benefits are pretty much prescribed for us, but we'll go through each line and just let you know what those are and how they pertain to the budget. So the 621s are the group insurance. That is the employer paid portion of insurance. So those particular lines are prescribed. We pay a portion of employee insurance, $239 per employee that takes on the school sponsored insurance, regardless if they have the employee or employee family or employee spouse. This is broken in that top line. CRT is certified. The second line is CLS, that's classified. So ADE requires that we record those expenses based on the classification of the employee. So it's broken into certified and classified. Lines 35 and 36.
Mr. Brown, I had a quick question there, sir.
Yes, sir.
So what happened in FY20 as it relates to CRT group INS? I noticed that we budgeted 237, but we actually went to 181,000. Can you help us explain that major difference in that gap? I'm curious.
Well, I would suspect that we had some employees, maybe quite a few employees that retired that were less, and we replaced them with less expensive employees after the budget was posted. So you have to remember these budget numbers are actually generated in the summer. And then as people retire, you'll have less expensive employees come about. And we may see this, another option there that could have been a factor here, which would probably apply to fiscal year 21 as well, would be if you can move more salaries and fringe over to like a federal fund to take care of some of that, then you may have it budgeted in the operating, but it will move to that federal tab whenever you actually pay it. We'll have some of that this year because of the Arkansas Governor COVID release, and that did start in fiscal year 20. So that as well could have been an impact. It'll be a larger impact for fiscal year 21 because we're moving about $800,000 in salaries from different funds, not just the legal fund tab that we're talking about, but from food service, federal, categorical. So that is a federal fund. So you'll have, that will have a positive impact on the legal fund, the tab we're talking about now, which is our operating. But there's factors that actually go into that, where the budget and actual looks like it's a little far away, but I can actually dive into that if you want me to and give a better explanation of it. But off the top of my head, that's two major factors that would be involved with.
Because I noticed, interesting to that, because I noticed if it is attrition, but if you look all the way up on salaries for classified, that number is almost, you know, it's actually over what we've budgeted. So I'd be interested in the correlation. Something doesn't add up to me because if it's salary lapse, then if those retiring, we're hiring folks with, you know, lower on the scale, there should be a larger cost savings, but we've actually paid more out in salaries. I was just curious about that. And then I noticed in FY21, but why would we only be budgeting 56,000 on that line if we've been spending? I mean, that was our lowest year in actual at 181, but I'm curious why.
These numbers actually come from personnel budgeting. So it depends on the fund that the employees are coded to. What we do is we code the salary to the particular fund, and then the benefits follow that salary. So I would have to look at that. I'd have to look into that further to give you a detailed explanation of it. But right off the top of my head, I just don't know. I just have to look into that.
Thank you.
Yep. I'll make a note though
because easily in those two categories, we've been spending well over. I mean, you look at the actuals at 200 consistently. And I know that 1 year, but 181, and then why we've dropped so significantly on budgeting, we're not even close to what we've trend budgeted. So thank you for that.
Yes, sir. All right, and the next two lines 35 and 36 are, those are payroll taxes, and that is collected from both the district and the employee. That's Social Security is 6.2% of their taxable gross income. And then so the employee pays that 6.2% and the district pays the matching part of that. So those two lines, top line is certified, bottom line is classified, and it's an automatic 6.2% of their taxable gross salary. And again, these lines are, the budgets and the actuals are, the budget is actually calculated through personnel budgeting when we set up their salary in budget prep. And then we actually post that from budget prep over to our eFinance software to finalize. These two lines, 622s, those are the Medicare matching taxes. And that's 1.45% of the employee's taxable gross salary. And so these four lines, 35 and 36 that we just talked about, Social Security, and 37 and 38 together are what people commonly refer to as the FICA tax. So that's 7.65% total together. And the employee pays that on taxable wages, and the district pays a matching payroll tax together. So these two lines here are percentages and calculated based on total taxable wages. Any questions about those four lines? This particular line is teacher retirement. Okay, so 6230 and 62320, those two lines actually go together. So these two lines are the 14.5%, the district portion of teacher retirement that we have to pay. So in the payroll process, employees who are contributory pay 6% of their salary, 6% of their taxable gross salary into teacher retirement. And so that's deducted out of their gross wages. The district has to match that 6% with 14.5%. Used to be 14% for years since its inception, but the legislature 3 or 4 years ago passed a bill that raises the teacher retirement, the district matching portion, from 14% to 15%, and they spread out that increase over 4 years. And so they're increasing it by 0.25%. And so we're in the middle of that 1% increase. So we're in year 2 of that increase. So these two, so 62310 is the certified teacher retirement line, and the 62320 is the classified teacher retirement line. Again, it's 14.5%, and that is based on the teacher's taxable gross wages. Now, the two lines in between these, the licensed surcharge and non-licensed surcharge. What these two lines pertain to, again, about 3 or 4 years ago, there was a move of Arkansas Public Schools, quite a movement to outsource particular services. So that may be custodial services, it may be cafeteria services, it was substitute services. And so teacher retirement saw this mass exodus of, if it's held, if you're not outsourcing those, if you're paying those on your district payroll, then the 14.5% matching applies. But if you move that out to an outsource, then the 14% doesn't apply, and teacher retirement doesn't receive those funds. So the legislature enacted a surcharge. So there's a surcharge based on the number of dollars that you're spending outsourcing some sort of school operation. And what we outsource here are substitutes. And so we have to pay a surcharge based on each monthly invoice that we receive. And I'll note that the surcharge is like 2%. And if we were holding that payroll in-house for substitutes, it would be 14.5%. So there's still a savings there for the district in terms of using the outsourced model here. And then the surcharge allows teacher retirement to recoup some of the funds that they're losing based on the outsourcing of districts. All right, and I believe we're down to line 43 and 44. That's tuition reimbursement. Those particular lines are used to for employees that qualify. We actually have tuition reimbursement through 2 different funds. One is operating, the other, I believe, is Title 2A, retention. That's for retention of staff. But we do have tuition reimbursement options for employees that qualify for those reimbursements, and they'll HR has a set of qualifications that the employee has to meet in order to qualify. But those are recorded by classification. So the top line 62410 is for certified, and 62420 is classified. Again, this is just the operational side. This is not the federal. We have a different tab down here for federal, and we'll cover those when we get to that tab.
Are those, Mr. Brown, are those, am I reading that right? Are those budgeted for this year?
There's not a current budget line in there for it this year. I think what happened was there's actually a code change on that. I think we always budget the beginning salary. So if you look at fiscal year 20, that 35,027 is our beginning teacher salary. There is, it's probably on a different line in the budget that we'll just need to move and get it on the appropriate line. But it would be 36,000 budget for this fiscal year since our beginning teacher salary change. So we always, our policy says we'll budget up to the beginning teacher salary for the district for that particular line.
Just so I can clarify from my understanding, I thought I heard you say it's on a different budget.
It could be on a different line. It could have by error gotten on a different line, but we normally budget that annually. So I would have to research that and find the line where it's at. We would just move it to the appropriate line.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, and the next two line are unemployment compensations. Those are based on claims that happen throughout the year. So it's based on the number of claims that you have and what we have to remit to workforce. So that's lines 46 and 45. And again, they're divided by certified and classified.
Here is Mr. Brown. Maybe that's something that Mr. Smith, how many, at 96,000, how many claims are we talking about for workman's comp? I mean, I know those are personnel matters, but we could know the numbers of just
unemployment or workers' comp.
Both. I'm sorry, that would be workman's comp.
Yes.
How many of those?
So the line where 96,000, that would be, this is the workers' comp. This is for premiums. And what you'll notice here is that we actually started a different process this year. So you'll see prior years, there was not much activity between fiscal year 19-20. What we've done this year, this is a cost savings that we've actually implemented for the operational budget. So one of the options we had, which the district had never exercised, was to bill out workers' comp based on the fund that the worker was paid from. In the past, the district has just written a check for that workers' compensation insurance and paid that 100% out of operating. But this past year, we went ahead and set up, there was quite a bit of setup involved in that, but we went ahead and set that up in our payroll process. And now that charge is actually charged back to the funds that pay for it. So if it's a federal fund that's working, that's paying the salary of an employee, then the federal fund will pay the workers' comp. If it's child nutrition that's paying for the salary, then child nutrition would pay for the workers' comp. If a categorical fund is paying for the salary, then the categorical. the pay. So operating is not absorbing 100% of the cost anymore. So that was a method that we had used to implement. So that's why you see the budget here and the numbers that you see for fiscal year 21. The next 4 lines, 49, 50, 51, 52, is the employee deduction. This is the benefits this is for health benefits that are paid to the employee benefits division. And this is based on the employee, what they elect as coverage. Am I covering just myself, or if I'm covering my spouse? Do I cover my children? And all my premiums as we run payroll, the plans that they have elected in the open enrollment process, the premiums for those insurances are collected here, and then they're paid from here to the employee benefits division, which is a state division that supervises the health insurance for public school employees. There's a premium assist line. These 2 lines exist. I think years ago, there was something called a FICA savings that was implemented. And again, just like teacher retirement came back and said, hey, we want to, we're seeing some decrease in our revenue. We want to implement a surcharge. This is basically a health insurance surcharge that's been imposed by EBD. And it's additional, these 2 lines, 50 and 52, are actually district paid. So that's a fee imposed by EBD that the district has to pay based on the health plan and coverage that an employee chooses. And those are, again, prescribed by EBD and set up by them. We receive a feed from them monthly to update those based on employee elections. And again, all 4 lines are remitted back to EBD. Any questions there? Okay, line 53 is the public retirement. This is a line, we don't have too many people involved in this, but these are employees who are a member of the public employee, the Arkansas Public Employee Retirement System. So it's called APERS, Arkansas Public Employee Retirement System. And they may have had a state job prior to coming to the school district. And when they come to the school district, they have the option of either converting that to a teacher retirement or staying with the APERS program. And so we do have a few students, probably a few employees, probably less than 10, that elect to stay with APERS and not convert it to Arkansas Teacher Retirement. And in that case, this particular line is the retirement line that deals with APERS and people that are a member of that retirement system. So we collect the retirement dues there and we remit those to APERS. And then the last 2 lines are just other benefits that are not outlined in the 6.2s. And we've got some, we have some life insurances. We have lots of different benefits that employees elect to participate in. And those are based on employee elections and based on what they want to participate in. If they want to participate in short-term or long-term disability, if they want to participate in some type of life insurance policy, that would be categorized on those 2 lines. And that brings us down to line 56. So this particular line are totals of all the 6-1s salary and all the 6-2s that we've just discussed. So I guess I can pause there and say, are there any questions that have developed since we've been talking about that?
I'm a little bit confused about, it's not a big deal, but you were saying on this health insurance, the premium assist, that came about because of FICA savings?
Yeah, there was some legislation that happened, and I guess it's been about 6 years ago. There was some legislation that happened that created this the ability for EBD to collect some additional surcharges from the district, and this is how EBD does it. And I'm not sure. I would have to do some research on that for you to go any further in depth on it. It's been a while since I've reviewed it or talked about it or read about it, but I could include it in our next board information if you'd like.
Okay, I was just, you said something about the tax savings, and I was trying to reconcile that in my mind, and I was having trouble. So
I'll follow up with that on the description in our board information.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
I do, Mr. Brown. So, so when you look at FY18, FY19, FY20, when you just look at those totals, so for example, in FY19, well, I've got 18 here. Yep, there you go. So like we budget 51 million, but we're actually spending 55, but give or take, that's about a $4 million difference. In 19, there's 54 million, but we're spending 57. That's about a $3 million difference between what we budget and spend. And then last year in 20, between 54 and 59, roughly a 4 million. So there's a $4 million gap between what we budget and what we're spending. And so I guess my first question is, where's that coming from? Like, help me with understanding where.
I can help you with that. That goes back to the last 3 years. We have given a bonus to all employees it's been transferred out of the building fund. So it was not budgeted in the operational fund, but ADE requires that we pay that, the bonus out of the budget units, the fund from where employees. So what you have to do is pay it from where they're currently being paid, and then you transfer funds over to that. So the bonus wasn't budgeted in the operational account, but it was expended there. So that's why the bonus, the $2,500 bonus for the last 3 years was approximately $3.3 million each year. And that's roughly what that bonus costs the district each year.
That came out of fund balance?
It comes out of Fund 3. The board voted to give that, what the board for several years approaching construction had transferred quite a bit of money into savings for construction. And so the board back in 18 wanted to do something for the teachers who had not received a raise in a while. And they tapped the Fund 3 what we call the savings or the construction savings, the building fund, that particular fund, they tasked that for the first bonus and then for the subsequent bonus in fiscal year 19 and 20. So the bonus each year was paid out of the operating because ADE requires that, but we transferred funds from Fund 3 over to the particular funds to cover it.
And that was one-time cost. That doesn't get added to their base salary,
That's
right?
correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you for that.
Yes, sir. Okay, so we'll move on. Now, some of the lines that you'll see quite a few lines that may be zero in here that are not used. But what we did was we just we kept all the lines in there so you can see these, and we tried to group them in ways that made sense. So this first group that we just talked about, all the 6-1s and all the 6-2s. The 6-1s are salaries, the 6-2 are benefits. Now we get into the 6-3s. These are expenditures for purchase services. And the first group here is called administrative support. And these top 3 here, they're staff services, management services, Board of Education services, things along that line. They are charged to these particular accounts.
So, Mr. Brown, help me with that. So like in 63130 Board of Ed Services, looks like the only thing that we've been spending on that administrative is that. What is the expenditure there?
So
like what kinds of
the main expenditure on these lines on that 63130 is that what we pay to the Pulaski County Treasurer and the Pulaski County Election Commission for election expenses. We don't have any budgeted this year because we didn't have a special election and we were on the general election ballot, so there's no cost to the district. But in prior years, in 19 and 20, there were election costs because we didn't hold it on the general election date. In fiscal year 18, if you all remember, I think it was in 15, 16, and 17, we had an early buyout for employees. And there was some, so that program was a 3-year buyout. So that was 15, 16, and 17. But the board approved a few employees that it wanted to hold on to that they deemed essential and actually have their buyout, their 3 years be 16, 17, and 18. So the reason you see this 23,000 block right here is because that there were charges for that 4th year of the buyout for just a few employees that were approved to be bought out in 18. So the district just said there were a few employees that they wanted to allow to retire a year later than in 17 or in 15. So they allowed them to retire in 16, and the payout ended up finalizing in 18 for that 3 years.
Thank you, sir.
That helped? Yes, sir. Okay, and then the next group here will be the 632s. The 632s are professional educational services. This particular line is related to some type of purchase service that we have done for instructional purposes. And this may be related to schools with teachers. It may be related to schools and students. It just depends on what the particular need is and what contract was proposed.
Are those stipend funds, Mr. Brown?
They're not stipends. So stipends would have to come out of the 6-1 for our employees. This is payment to non-employees for instructional services, some type of professional educational instructional service.
Like if we had a consultant, as an example, doing PD with administrators, that would come out of here?
That's correct. All right, the next two lines here would be your certified substitutes and your classified substitute charges. What we have to do here is ADE requires if we pay a certified substitute, it gets paid out of one fund, and if you're paying a classified substitute, it gets paid out of another fund. And so these are the charges that have been over since 18 for substitutes. So if you'll notice here, these particular years, so in 18, we spent $1.1 million on substitutes out of the operational fund. We spent 1.18 in 19. We spent 963,000 in 20. And we've got 1.5 million here. And again, the budget's fluid. We can move that. So depending on how much is needed, we can move between these two lines.
But we would anticipate, again, another cost savings in this area.
Yes,
just because of the delivery of instruction and COVID
yes,
and having a hard time to find substitutes, that kind of thing.
Yes, sir. All right, line 68 is consulting educational. This could be for something that's not instructional related. So if we had consultants that we were paying to perform things that are not instructional related, in line 65 would be a consultant providing services for an instructional service. This would be not necessarily an instructional service. This could be a consultant that's providing like administrative support, or I believe this is the line where, like, when we have a facilities consultant through the co-op, it gets paid there. And then any other consultants we bring in that's not instructionally related get paid on that particular one. In line 69 is purchase services for student assessment. There's a lot of factors that go into that. That can be payment for an ACT test. It could be payment for an AP test. It could be so this would be consulting services for those particular items. So now, years past, we would bring in some substitutes at the school to help monitor those tests. We would pay them a consulting fee to do that. We've done less of that in the last few years, so you'll see a trend in that expense going down. Mostly our counselors and teachers are handling the administration of assessment.
Mr. Brown, a quick question, back one on the consulting educational. So when I've talked about doing a curriculum management audit, is that the line item we would use for such? So yes. Compensation study, those things that I'm getting ready to propose, that's our, okay.
Yes, sir. See, you actually have a choice. So we would look at the scope of what they're going to do. So if it's a consulting that will benefit the administration, it may get coded here on this particular line. If it's a consulting contract that might benefit the board, it might be recorded up on this line. So we would look at what is the goal of the consulting contract, and then decide at that point which line would be best fitted for it.
Gotcha. So we're going to do some stuff around policy development and support around that. We could take that out of the board, but if the curriculum management audit, compensation study, that could come out of this line.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Perfect. All right. The next group that we are going to discuss is the 63300s. It's professional development. And again, this is under the purchase service. So this is where we are purchasing consulting services that's related to PD in some way. So the top line is certified, the bottom line is classified. And what I'll say here is you won't see too many expenses coming out of this particular line, because we actually receive funds for professional development That actually comes out of the categorical tab, which is down here, which we'll get to. So most of our professional development expenses will be out of the categorical or federal tabs, because there's a categorical fund that we receive from the state called professional development. We get funding for professional development services. And then some of our federal funds require professional development of staff, especially like for schools that are in school improvement. So our biggest expenses for professional development will be on these last two tabs, not the operational tab.
Mr. Brown, when we get a chance, just to follow up item, I'd like to see the breakdown of on the certified and classified, what we are actually spending in professional development in those areas.
From operating or from all funds?
Well, I'm just operating, because I know on the other fund side, Ms. Ratliff's, is we got Title II, we've got some other, the federal funding that I know she's done that other presentation, but I'm just curious on what we're spending.
Sure.
On. Yep, just curious.
See if I have that. Yeah, so I can answer part of that right now. So on this particular line, the 11,000, this 73. So we had, I had some notes here that says that the largest expenditure on this line historically has been Arkansas Ames. So it's been professional development for teachers involved in Arkansas Ames program, which is an AP professional development program. Then this particular line, my notes say that this has mainly been for classified training and training conducted by the Arkansas School Board. So if you recall, recently, people in my office, myself and Keisha, Ms. Edwards, and Ms. Hale, we attended a Cognos training. Yeah. This would be a line where that expense would have been paid. And then as well, Arkansas School Boards has conducted some training, and I'd have to look up the details of what they provided or to whom, but those are the items there that we have paid out of those lines. So I'll get you more detail.
Thank you. No, that gives me an idea. And
okay.
Good example of the Cognos training, financial training.
And just for an example, for this year, if you remember the Cognos training, I had PD funds assigned to my department. So I used all of my PD funds to pay for the three of us to get that training. And then what was left over that I couldn't pay for out of PD, I paid out of operating. So it would be on that particular line. All right. And the next group is other professional services. And in this particular line, we see financial audits as the expense there. And this is just our traditional annual audit that we pay for through Hudson and System. All right, and then in the next group, this is the legal professional. We have, this is where we code things based on whether it's legal related to contracts, or whether we're being sued, or we're defending, or we're asking for research opinions. So this particular section is all legal. And you can see we've trended, let's see, in 18, we trended from about 78,000 in legal fees. In 19, it was 112. In 20, it was 113. And as of this year, we're at 114. I can say I do know that a few invoices from fiscal year 20 was paid at after July 1 of this particular year for legal fees. So some of this 114 actually belongs back in fiscal year 20. But for the most part, that's our legal section.
I saw Mr. Brown, but we only budgeted 10,000 for this year.
Yes, and that was because we did not get the HR budget set up until it was actually after Christmas this year. So Mr. Smith and I sat down and did his budget. He actually has a line item in his budget now for legal defense. And that line has actually increased since this report was run. But he and I did his operational budget. It was after this was printed.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Sure. Let me just ask real quick that this year we spent almost as much as we spent all of last year. Was there something unusual this year?
Well, part of that, part of this 114 belongs actually in fiscal year 20. So last year, I don't know exactly how much of that. I can get that number for you if you're interested. Some of these invoices that were paid after July 1 were for expenses incurred actually in prior to July 1. So that
You don't have any idea how much?
I can get that number for you if you're interested.
So, Mr. Brown, just a question to that, then these were services prior to June 30th that were paid afterwards? They were paid in July?
Yes.
But when we had talked earlier, I thought we were talking about how June expenses had to be paid in June and we couldn't pay anything out in July.
If you recall, I just said it was a preference. There is a way to get to do this like auditors want. So you can pay something in July that was for June. There's just some steps that you have to go through and basically some disclosure during the audit that you have to perform for that to happen. One of the things that we do for auditors each year is we run all checks that are printed after July 1 that have an invoice date prior to July 1. And so like electricity bill, electrical bills, utilities, those type things, we get bills in July that are for June. And there is an appropriate way of being able to pay that in another fiscal year, but there's some disclosure and some particular steps we have to go through to satisfy auditors.
Right, but as long as we follow those steps, i.e. if we're running summer school and work incurred in June can be paid in July.
It can be, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes. I think what you're referring to, there was, prior to my coming to the finance department, there was an issue in prior audits where some summer school pay was paid in July. It was for work done in June. It wasn't appropriately disclosed with the auditors and it wasn't appropriately accrued to the prior fiscal year. And audit took issue with that. So that's when they came to us and said, here's what you need to do. If people are working in June, you need to pay it in June. If not, you have to disclose it, go through the appropriate procedures to accrue that back. So we do know the appropriate steps to do it. So we can make it happen.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. All right, and the next group here is medical professional. And most of this is, most of this will be, I think they've just developed a new code for drug testing and we haven't implemented that yet, but we will. I believe this this line here, 991, this particular code becomes required in fiscal year 22. So this line here, let me just look at my notes right quick. Yeah, so this particular line for medical is for speech pathology therapy and DOT physicals for our bus drivers.
Wait, say that again, Mr. Brown, for our bus drivers?
This is, yeah, our bus drivers are required to have Department of Transportation physicals. We refer to those as DOT physicals, and we pay for those.
Yes.
And so that particular line is where the DOT physicals for bus drivers is coded.
Gotcha.
So there is some speech therapy that we paid out of operating for some students that were not maybe categorized as, they were categorized as regular ed students. We pay on this particular line here.
So speech therapy came out of that? That wasn't out of in OT, PT, speak over in maybe special ed, or?
It may, you remember, special ed will be on this separate tab down here. Most, and there are some state special ed funds within the legal fund balance because it includes Fund 2. So this more than likely is a special ed or a regular ed speech therapy for students plus the DOT physicals.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then the next line here is the security. And this particular line is what we pay for security, like at athletic games and for board meetings. And we have North Little Rock police officers there, and we're paying North Little Rock PD for security at our events. That's the line where we pay.
So, Mr. Brown, that is, so if we have to pay for campus supervisors, does that come out of this as well, or no? That's just local law enforcement overtime to cover.
This would be payment to non-employees for security.
Gotcha.
Payment to employees for like extra security. So our campus supervisors that work would actually be coded up in the salary section in that 6.1 and probably the overtime line.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir. All right, so that, let's see, lines 99 and 100, other professional services. And these other lines are real fun because it is a catch-all at times for that. So this would be for other consulting services that do not have an ADE required code above. So like if you're paying for an audit, you have to pay it on the audit line. If you're paying for legal defense, you got to pay it out of legal defense. If you're paying for any type of medical profession, you have to pay it out of the medical line. So if there's not a prescribed line and you're paying for things that are considered professional services, then they would get coded to this particular line.
So, okay. So I see like in 2019, like it was like almost $300,000 that we've spent, but then we're now down to, you know, just curious what we spent in that year. Because you saw kind of a spike from 18 to 19, and then it kind of almost bell curved, if you will. Just curious what we spent that year.
Yeah, let me see if I can just find that for you very quickly.
And then, Mr. Brown, while you're doing that, I just want to check the will of the board. I know we're approaching 2 hours. If you feel that this would be a good spot to close out this budget work session, or if the will is to go a little further, it would be at the will of the board.
I'm okay. I don't know if Cindy wants to take a poll or what.
I'm fine. I mean, you know, I'm good.
With kind of stopping this budget session, or would you like to continue?
Let's see if we can make it through rentals
Okay.
to the end of this page.
Okay. Fair enough.
All right. I did look that up, Dr. Paluski. In fiscal year 19, the $297,000, $153,000 of that was actually speech therapy services that we moved. We moved that expense. We actually moved that expense. So that is a special ed related expense, and it's out of Fund 2260. So since it's a Fund 2 and it's special ed, it would actually be out of here. Now, so what that means is that we did a lot of, I think that's the year that we had a shortage in speech therapists, and we had to hire consultants to do that. So that was actually a special ed expenditure for making up for the lack of employees that we had in that particular.
That is correct, Mr. Brown. I'm on here.
Okay.
That was the year that we were down like 8 speech therapists, and we had to do contract therapy before we raised salaries and were able to hire them later. So that was that year.
That's correct. And the board implemented a salary increase for OT and PT in fiscal year 20, and Ms. Alexander was able to get a full staff. So the expenditures have trended off. So
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, and the next group will be technical services, the 63500s, and you can see there that deals with document shredding. This is a new code. That's why you're seeing expenses just appear out here in fiscal year 21. So this is a new code that's been implemented by ADE, and we're beginning to implement that as well. Software maintenance and support. Just refer to my notes that I've got here. So that particular line is for Google Chrome licenses. So this particular line here, Google Chrome license, GoGuardian, and looks like also our maintenance contract for video cameras on the district.
Brian, why did it go up so much in this year? What changed?
I think because of the virtual that we're doing, some of this was recorded out of operation, but it will actually, we will move that expenditure over to CARES at some point in time. But expenditure for this particular year is for Google Chrome, GoGuardian, and some camera management. So the Google Chrome and the GoGuardian, those would qualify under CARES Act. So prior to closing this year, we'll move some of those expenses out and lower the impact on operational budget.
Okay, thank you.
The next couple of lines, I think there was on, let's see, this particular line here, I have some notes on it, 106, other technical services. See, this particular year we have, I think, installed some LED lights and door notification. So that's going to be some other technical services that were required. We hired a consultant to do it. And here's the drug testing line. You'll notice there was one up here. So looks like ADE is going to require us to do a change in our coding. We've been treating drug testing when there was no requirement. We set up our own code, and treated as technical services, but ADE has implemented a new code up here that we'll start using, and you'll see that line come about in fiscal year 22 budget. But we've been recording our expenses for drug testing on this line. And web host.
Mr. Brown, I'm sorry, the drug testing in that line item, that is different from the other category with the Department of Transportation with our, can you just say that again? What's that drug testing?
So this is actually for a drug test. The other one we were talking about was for DOT physicals. So that DOT physical will be a payment to.
That's under medical, I see.
That's under medical. And then this drug test will be to a consulting service who's performing that drug test for us.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. All right. Any other questions about technical services? All right, under professional and technical services, the final line, the 63,900, we have some notes on that. There are others not necessarily restricted there. So on the first line, 63,900, some of the charges that we have coded on this particular line are I think cable charges, energy management fee. Those are examples of things that would be coded here. Also, there may be additional consultants that require some type of professional or technical license that they're performing for the district that may be coded on this particular line. And let's see, this, of course, this is musical instrument repair. That's mostly for band. And this is a new line that's now required for athletic services. This is where probably the 112 and the 115, that's probably where we record a lot of our officials that work our athletic games. And the ADE has implemented a new code that they want us to use. Instead of the 900, it's the 912. So we begin using that. I think that actually came out mid-year this year. So some of these expenses are for those professional services performed by athletic officials.
Mr. Brown, while that says athletics, where would gate receipts fall in our budget?
I'm sorry, where would what fall?
Gate receipts, athletic, funds received for participation, we call gate receipts, attending football games, athletic events. Where do those funds show up in our budget? Is it under that?
No, sir. So all of these items that we're talking about are expenditure accounts only. So
that would be revenue.
Revenue is posted under a different account structure, but it is, I can tell you that all athletic revenue receipts are recorded in Fund 2007.
Is there a athletic budget, operating budget?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get to that. That'll be in a different.
Well, what we would have to do if you wanted to look at that, we'd just pull out Fund 2007 and look at its structure individually. So anything that's expended in 2007 would actually accumulate to the lines that we're talking about here. So we spend out of 2001, 2000, 2007, 2010. We have a lot of operating funds, and this particular sheet summarizes all accounts within all of those operating funds. So every expense for Fund 2007 in athletics will accumulate to one of these lines. But if you wanted to look only at athletics, we can run a report and pull that out and look at it.
So there's not a specific budget for athletics, it's all within these categories.
In this particular report, yes, but there is a budget for athletics in operation, and it's in Fund 2007.
Okay, well, is that in this report?
Well, we're doing expenditures right now. This isn't see up here.
So the total athletic budget is based on.
Yes, sir. It's within this.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
There's nothing in operating that is allocated to athletics. Everything that runs athletics is based upon revenue generated for athletic events.
No, there is operating dollars tied to that. We do not generate enough revenue from gate to operate athletics. We do have to transfer money from operating from Fund 2001 to 2007 annually. We do not generate enough gate receipts to 100% fund athletics.
Gotcha. But there's not a specific breakdown of athletics as it relates to operating, as it relates to categorically. It's within all of this.
It's within all this in this particular report. I can run just an athletic report that would pull all of its numbers out, and it would show you revenue, expenses, all operating, how it relates to the operating fund. Yes, sir.
Dr. Paluski and Brian, I would be interested in that. My caveat to that is, would that even include a separation of boys sports versus girls sports revenue breakdown cost?
I can run you that. I know we can get the expenses by sport like that. We do code them that way. However, ADE does not have an accounting structure that would allow us to run a report for boys athletic revenue versus girl athletic revenue. The revenue accounting structure is not as elaborate as the expenditure side. On the expenditure side, we code them by sport, and whether they're fall or spring, boy or girl, we code all those expenses that way. The expenditure structure allows us to do that. But on the revenue side, it's just simply, there's a code that just says athletic gate revenue, and that's where ADE, they want us to use that particular one. So we can actually run a report of that revenue, and we could look at that on a receipt basis and tell you, did that come from girls athletics or boys athletics? But there's not a specific code in the revenue for boys and girls. So I guess I can give you what you're asking for. It's just on the revenue side, it's a little bit harder to do, but not a problem if you're interested in that.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. All right, and then the next group is facility expenses. And we have a line there, of course, for what you probably see in your own household: water and sewer, sanitation, pest control, lawn care, and then other types of maintenance that we perform. These are all purchase services, so they are, we're purchasing water or sewer from the city, or sanitation from a company, pest control from a company, lawn care. Traditionally, we get just help now during the busy times when our crews may be overwhelmed during the summer. There may be some help there that we contract out, but very limited at this point.
So, Mr. Brown, would then the lawn care non-technical maintenance, is that all a budget that's within Mr. Hatch's shop?
Not necessarily all within his shop. there could be, Mr. Staggers could have a line item in his technology budget that has to do with maintenance or repair of something, in a telco closet. For the most part, yes, facility expenses will fall in the maintenance department, and that would be in Mr. Hatch's shop. But it doesn't necessarily have to be.
So if Mr. Ward's buying some pipe fittings for the leak that just happened over, where would that come out of?
Depends. It could come out of this non-technical repair. 2 lines here. Let me see what we have coded. 643. Okay, so on this particular line here, my notes say that's typically used for mostly maintenance expenses of all buildings, and some of the bigger ticket items in there are have been fire alarm services, and then services in within the technology part, like labor. So if Mr. Staggers hires a particular company to install TVs on the wall in the boardroom, that would be something that may come out of that particular line, or it may come out of the technology repair and maintenance line below it. So these 2 lines are mostly maintenance, buildings, fire alarms, technical services, the labor on that. This particular line here, some of the expenses are repair of iPads, replacement screens in Chromebooks, time clocks, replace the damaged HDMI cables, things like that.
Gotcha. So I'm curious too, in this, as we look at what happened from 18 to 19, if you look in lawn care, we were paying roughly about $5,500, and then we jumped to $2,300 the next year. What do we have an idea why?
We went through a period of time where we outsourced some lawn care. And then Mr. Hatch had brought a proposal to the board and said, if you'll add staff, I can contract less. And so we expanded his staff down there to accommodate more. So we've outsourced less.
Gotcha. So probably with his staff, then a cost savings to the district versus outsourcing.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right. So Ms. Temple, did you want to finish rentals? Is that what you were, or?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's how I was printed this out, and it stopped at rentals.
Okay.
But I don't know what the bottom of your page is. That was the bottom of my page.
I don't have a bottom. Mine keeps going.
That's what I have too, Ms. Temple. I do have rentals on my page 3.
Okay.
So here we will look at the rental section. And there's been some coding structure changes here. But I think we used to rent some sort of, we used to rent some facilities, maybe for the pre-K program at one time. It's been a while back and it's not fresh in my memory, but I'm thinking that I'd have to look these up if you're interested in them. I just don't know off the top of my head, but we did have at some time some pre-K facilities that were rented by the district that we no longer rent since we completed our construction. Equipment and vehicles. This particular line is when maintenance has to rent like some type of lift, whether it's a man lift to reach lights or change out light bulbs in a parking lot, or if they rent a commercial size pressure washer, things like that. That's what this particular line is used for. Transportation, this particular line is where we charge expenses 2 programs for transportation. So this is actually the rental of our school buses to programs within the district.
If we were doing field trips, Mr. Brown, would that come out of there?
Correct. So if we have a bus that is driven for field trip purpose, that bus is rented by the school. And so the district recoup part of that from the school budget for the use of that vehicle. We also, when vehicles are used by the athletic program,
okay,
it's rented to the athletic program. This is the coding structure we use for it.
Okay, thanks, sir.
And line 130 is our copier lease.
What happened in 2018?
Yeah, that was, I don't know what happened there, but our expenses have been pretty much steady. As you can see, last year and this year have tapered off because of, the virtual environment. We've had less copies happening. We pay on a per copy basis. But I'll say this, the copier lease did expire in December. So our copier lease which predates me, it's what I inherited whenever I arrived, but it actually has 2 prongs. It has a volume prong and a time prong of the contract. The time prong was 60 months, which whenever I came to purchasing, I can't tell you the last time the services have been bid out. When I came to purchasing and saw it was sort of a perpetual contract, I just said, we're stopping that. We're going to let the 60-month expire. So it's a 5-year, 60-month contract that the time frame has expired, but the volume on it has not been met. So we're continuing that contract until the volume's met, and then we will issue an RFP for copier services, and I think by issuing an RFP that we can get a better rate than what we're paying for copy right now.
Okay.
We're waiting for that, and sort of, COVID coming and us doing less copies. It's been a cost savings to us, but it also has lengthened the time that it's going to be before we can issue that RFP. So probably next December, I'll be looking at this to see if we've met the volume part of that, and we'll issue RFP this time, spring of fiscal year 22.
Okay.
Mr. Brown, we just have one vendor for our copiers. We don't have multiple vendors.
That's correct. We have one vendor contract for copier services.
Excellent. Excellent.
All right. And then on that last line, there's not been any tech rentals in the last 3 or 4 years. So that line, that rounds out our rentals at that point. So
Okay.
I'll answer any questions you all have, or that'd be a good stopping point. We'll pick up with construction services at our next workshop.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
You're welcome.
Very informative. So,
Yes, thank you.
And then just members of our Board of Education, if there are any reflections that you have, just go ahead and, send me those questions, and we'll make sure that, Mr. Brown will follow up on those in a weekly board report. And then we'll prepare Ms. Wonkum, based upon your question about looking at the athletic programs a little bit more closely. And then once we get to revenue, we can look at that as well. So be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So, Madam President, before you close this evening, I do just want to, I think Mr. Zakreski asked me a question about virtual Fridays, just to give the board a quick update and a public. So as I think back in January, when, was going to take a look at continuing that, which we did up until the end of the third quarter, which ends next Friday, I believe, on the 12th. So I'll be making a decision shortly. Certainly gaining some impact from our school leaders as we begin to look at going into the fourth quarter. So I've not made a decision yet, but I'll be making a decision shortly so that we can inform, parents as well as our students as well as our teachers. But as I continue to look into this, I do, there is the obvious concern, and that is, not only the level of instruction, but also there's learning loss, but there's also a significant loss of learning time or instructional time. So that's something that I'm digging into. I've talked to 3 principals today, as a matter of fact, as I was out in schools, walking some buildings and doing some walkthroughs with some principals and having a conversation about it. So I'll be very, very shortly, probably early next week, that I'll be making that decision once I have an opportunity to speak with our principals individually, because I think it's important to hear from our leaders. But that would be kind of a nutshell of some concerns I have moving forward, because we also have to look at not only the fourth quarter, but we've got to be looking at the summer. In fact, we're going to be coming with our summer program overview, that will offer a summer program for all of our schools. Our executive directors and our principals have been working on that. So we've been working on that, and I want to be able to make sure that the public is aware of that so we can communicate to parents. And then as we look into next year, our instructional program and beginning to put in some after school programs, as I am concerned, I think as any leader across the country, of it's not only learning loss, but is looking at how we're using instructional time, making sure that we're teaching to the level of the standard, the rigor that our students in the standard demand. So I'm looking at all those factors and multiple data points to make a very informed decision going forward. So the public as well as the board could anticipate that. I would say at the latest would be early next week. So I just wanted to give a little commercial, because I think Mr. Zakreski asked me that question. I don't know if he's still on here, but I know he wanted a brief update. So that's where we are, and we'll be happy to inform you as I always do before we make any decision before it goes to the public.
Okay, so just for clarification, you'll be making that decision sometime next week and then putting it out for the public. And then I too had sent you an email regarding that very question. So I'm glad JT had the same thought process, so to say. So, okay, great. That's good to hear. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And I apologize. I've been out in schools past couple of days, so I will get to that, Ms. Walcom. So I apologize if I didn't get to that sooner. But if that's your question, that's great, because parents need to know, kind of either one way or the other. Our students or teachers, everybody needs to know. And we're approaching that as we start to move into our spring break.
Yes, yes. And it whenever you get to the email, that's fine. But the email will also, and I'll kind of say it publicly, I'm concerned about the consistency, among COVID. So, but I also get the flip side of learning and structure, and, the entire nation is behind, so to say, for schools. So I get that. I understand, but thank you.
Sure. You're welcome. You're welcome. And it's, and I'll preface this every time we talk about this. We're in unprecedented times. This is just, a year
Yes.
like no other that anyone has experienced. Parents, children, teachers, leaders. It's just been a trying year. And I'm hoping that, as I'm very proud that we've gotten through our vaccines. That is great news. I know some started their second. I think folks are starting to feel, at least our teachers that I've talked to today, feeling more comfortable having that. So that's a good thing. I think as we try to end out the school year, try to engage our students in the summer program that we haven't necessarily been able to offer before. Excited about that, to try to engage as many kids as we can. So hopefully, as we kind of see the end of the tunnel, hopefully we'll be able to get back to really some kind of full normalcy as we open 21-22 school year.
Absolutely. Kind of following up with that also. And what about the mask? I don't know if you heard what the governor did or said, the other day. So regarding the mask, that will also need to be a decision that is made.
Yes.
And then the caveat to that is also the summer school, with the mask. And then if we have to stay virtual for next school year, do we have an alternative plan regarding that? So I just read you my email. I apologize.
It's okay. So yeah, the short end, kind of a couple things to that. And yes, I'm very aware the Governor Hutchins is considering lifting the mask mandate. And I know there's different, I think as what I've listened to on Friday, he's going to continue to look at the metrics and make a decision that he believes based on science is what best for the state of Arkansas. As we all know, our neighbors next door in Texas have lifted that, just the other day. But I also think we still need to continue with what we're doing. Wearing masks, social distancing, washing our hands until we get more information as we move forward. That being said, let's just kind of see what happens, and then we'll have to come back as a board to make a decision. And I think the governor outlined that would be a local decision that boards of educations and superintendents would collaboratively make. So as we learn more, we'll kind of go towards that. The second thing, part of your question was around the summer program. And if we did have a summer program, would they be wearing masks? I think that was your second part of your question.
Yes.
Yep. And I think as we kind of learn more and go forward, I think personally, if I had to make a decision today, I'd say let's stay the course and let's continue. If I had to make a decision right today, but let's see what the month unfolds. And then I think the last part of your question was around a virtual option. So we are going to offer a virtual option for our parents. Matter of fact, Dr. McGee has been leading that work. We do have some survey data that's out. I think the last time I met with him, maybe around 300 parents that have, suggested that they would be interested in that option. I know Dr. Reynolds is working on more of the details around that. We want to be able to kind of narrow down what our virtual academy is going to look like 2.0. It's got to look different. And one of the major components that's going to have to look different is some criteria. Because if you've been a student, you're little Greg, and attendance has been a problem, and just virtual isn't working, we've got to look at multiple indicators and multiple data points and really have that conversation to say it's virtual isn't working for Greg. And so that's why I want to get everybody around a table with the parent that we're making informed decisions. Now, some students, absolutely, virtual is working for them. And I think the notion here is every kid and every child learns differently. And our job is to be able to make sure that we're providing instructional models to do that. Based upon our data that we're looking at, I would say the vast majority of our students very much have to be with and should be with their teachers in school. But we will offer a virtual option this year. So, and then what we plan to do, Ms. Welcome, is really come back to the board and inform the public of what that looks like, what that sounds like. And we're going to be doing that pretty quickly. So summer program you're going to see next, and then behind that will be our virtual learning program.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I read my email to you.
No, it's okay. You just saved me one email to draft back to you. So
there you go. We're good. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions? Okay. Madam President, it would all be yours.
Okay, so I guess we'll call this evening, wrap it up. Good night, everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Temple. Thank board members. Appreciate it. Thanks, staff. I appreciate it. Have a good evening.